Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Here comes my anxiety.
Is that what you say to clients?
Yeah, yes, it is. And exactly like that with the ominous voice. Ominous voice.
That was amazing.
You will respect my boundaries.
Running a successful business often means dealing with stress, burnout, and exhaustion. That's why prioritizing your mental health at work is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. Hi, I'm Leanna Lee.
I'm Mike Vini, and this is Bettermental. Join us as we share tools, tips, and strategies to help you build better systems for health and business growth.
Ready?
Let's get to work. Welcome to Bettermental. My name is Mike Vini, and I'm super excited to be here with my lovely co-host, Leanna Lee. Hi, Leanna.
Hiya from Scotland. This is our first internationally recorded episode, isn't it?
Yes, and super excited to talk to you today because we're going to be talking about working with clients as it relates back to stress management. And we're talking about this because clients can give us mental health challenges if we don't have certain systems and strategies in place to deal with them. And even if you don't have mental health challenges, I think sometimes client work can actually help you develop them out of nowhere. So it's really important to have this discussion. And just, I should say this, professional relationships in general are just really difficult to manage, especially if you run your own business and work for yourself. So it's really important that, we learn to deal with communication, unmet expectations, boundaries, the annoying client who won't pay you, whatever it is. So today I'm super excited to introduce our very, very special guest. She's going to tell you a little bit about herself in a moment here, but she's someone very special that's come into both of our lives for Leanna and I together on this show and individually. And her name is Chrissy Kozol. Hi, Chrissy.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, welcome. You're our first guest on Bettermental. How exciting.
This is exciting. I helped to build the brand from the beginning when it was just a little seed waiting to grow. And yeah, I'm excited to see what unfolds talking to you guys in this episode.
Awesome.
Yeah. So tell us more about you.
Sure. I have what they call a creative portfolio career. I'm a creative professional, small business owner who started in the professional world doing graphic design and art direction. And after a little over a decade doing it full time, I made the jump and went freelance and did a la carte services for different companies. And then in 2019, I decided to refocus and start an LLC, become more of a small business owner and target small businesses and other clients in the creative sector.
Awesome. So why do we have so many questions for you today, Chrissy, and we're so excited that you're here because, as you said, we've worked together closely before, and now we're here. We will be talking about the process of bringing Bettermental to life, but we're also just kind of excited to reconnect and see you again. I feel like this is sort of a reunion in a way of the OG Bettermental people and the team.
Yes.
and yeah, so we're just really excited to dive into this with you. So do you mind if we go ahead and start with some questions?
No, all right, let's go.
Yeah. So the first one I have for you is, how has stress impacted your work with clients?
Yeah, it was interesting when I went freelance at first, because the reason I went freelance was because of health issues, and I wasn't able to, be in an office from 9 to 5, and I had to establish boundaries with myself and get real about what I could and could not handle based on where I was at physically. And what that experience taught me in regards to handling stress with clients and the stress as it pertains to deadlines was to seek out clients that were understanding and be honest. I feel that the first time that I had to communicate to a client that, anxiety was getting the best of me and I was not having that great of a time physically, when I was open with them about it instead of spinning in my own mind, they were very understanding. And I feel like for small business owners and freelancers, especially, communication is key with clients. And if you have a client that is unable to hold space for you and where you're at health wise and come to an agreement and work with you, then they might not be the best fit. And it's kind of like dating, like you could leave the door open for collaboration or saying, hey, this isn't a fit. I think we need to, renegotiate this agreement or terminate it. Here's people I could refer you to that might be able to meet your needs and these deadlines in a way that I can. And this whole journey as a small business owner and freelancer, it's been a process of trial and error, really, of finding clients that fit. Because I have had clients that they just were not in that space where they had openness to people who were struggling. And that was, it was rough because it's like when you first, that happened within the first year and a half of me becoming a freelancer. And that was a big blow because it took me, I had to work up the courage, to just be like, hey, I can't meet this deadline. Here's what's going on for me. And to be met with, okay, sorry, you're not the fit. And just to be cut off like that after being so vulnerable with the client, it was rough.
Now, I have to ask you, because we're kind of told, all of us, when we start out on our professional journeys, that we don't want to burn bridges, right? We want good relationships with people. And I think in the world of freelancing and small business, your reputation is everything, right? Like, you fear that one little thing that you screwed up on going around and people talking about you and stuff. But the thing I want to ask you about is the balance between, communicating about this and sharing obviously nothing, but also when is it just too much information? Like, how much do you share with a client from your experience?
Yeah, give us tips here. How are you finding these clients? What do you say to them? Share those notes with me later, Mike.
Now that I've had some years under my belt with doing this, I tend to tread lightly. I have to build trust with clients. You don't just develop relationships, take time to develop, whether it's friendship, romantic relationship, or a client relationship. And
wow, that's a good one. Yeah.
I've found that through asking clients questions earlier on, when they first come to me and ask about my services. And
well, wait, can I just interrupt you there though? That's a great thing. What are those questions? I'm just so curious, like what kind of questions?
Well, it's, what, of course I'm like on the spot now. So I'm having trouble. Some of them that I've asked, it's, like, how do you handle disappointment? Because we're all human. Yeah. You're writing it down. How do you handle disappointment, and how would you communicate that to me? Because, again, with the pandemic, I feel that the stress that everybody's been under, whether they're conscious of it or not, everybody's been like, my gosh, I can't hold it together at one point or another. And it's made people become a bit more gracious with disappointments because, especially like I have some clients who are, when they had young kids, and then with the pandemic, they have suddenly had to work from home and have their children who were, out at daycare or school with them all the time. And so they're overloaded. So it's really helped everybody, I feel, to experience disappointment and almost be near burnout. And become a bit more self-reflective. So there's more of a stage where conversations and questions that are a bit more deep compared to, 10 years ago, corporate, professional business talk. The very tone of the conversations has changed.
I love that. So, yeah, by the way, I just want to reiterate that question right there. How do you handle disappointment and how would you communicate that with me? That is a money question right there. So, if you're listening, remember that question. It will definitely be in the show notes. And now we want to just chat with you a little more about disclosure. Leanna, what are your thoughts on disclosure and talking about it up front and what that can lead to and stuff like that?
Well, yeah. So it's funny how, like you, Chrissy, I think it was my first ever freelance. It might have been my second ever freelance project that was just a nightmare as far as boundaries and mental health goes. I think in the first couple of years of running a business is so rough trying to learn to advocate for yourself. And I say that, but I just had a similar situation happen again recently for the first time in quite a long time. And it was rough coming back to that after years of again building that up, being in therapy, learning to advocate for myself, and it just makes you realize that no matter how long you've been in business, you just never know when it's going to crop up again. It could be the situation, it could be the client, it could be the topic. Something can just throw you off kilter and cause you to break your own boundaries and to not put those systems in place that you used to. So I've learned painfully recently that it's something that I have to be even more rigid and vigilant about. So, and yes, Mike, you have your hand up.
No, I have to, I have to ask you both a question now, though. You're both talking about scenarios where, you've disclosed something because you needed to in a situation, and, maybe the client like, peace out, you're done. Have you ever had an instance where you disclosed something to a client about your mental health, or, there was a struggle and you needed to get clarity or whatever, and it actually turned out to be a good thing?
That's the case with 90% that's the case in 90% of the cases, I would say. Like Chrissy, I don't have a formal system, but I have found ways to get to know clients over time, to pick clients that I think have the same values as I do. I look for those. And more often than not, we end up bonding over mental health stuff. I'm finally writing a piece now for someone who was very patient with me delaying the deadline at least twice last year as I was preparing to leave the country to become a digital nomad. And she said, it's fine. This is an evergreen topic. It'll be here when you get back. Just let me know. And I'm like, oh, you're amazing. What about you, Chrissy?
Yeah, I've had the same experience. I mean, even with you, I came across Leanna. We met through, I think it was Facebook, and I was working with her, and I hit a bump, and I remember, my anxiety creeping up. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I am unable to make this deadline, and I really like her and I don't want to disappoint. And then it's like, that's one thing I have to talk about with all of this is it's like, I know a lot of small business owners who are perfectionists or recovering perfectionists, and most people just really want to do excellent work and help each other out. And when, I was honest with Leanna about not being able to make the deadline, she was great about it and so graceful. And yeah, no, it was fantastic because it's like, I feel that especially what I've seen going from a freelancer who did a la carte design and art direction services for larger companies to focusing on small business owners, it's so different because small business owners, we're all like trailblazing in our own ways and we all have our struggles. And I feel that we're all rooting for each other. And when you hire somebody and work with somebody as a small business owner, you believe in them. When you make that commitment to work with each other, you've got each other's back. I feel like it goes deeper than just a transactional nature of a lot of, freelancing that I did with corporate clients. So It should
anyway. I think that's the ideal. And I think we've been so lucky because that has been the case for the majority of us. And Mike, you're going to have to chip in if you have any horror client stories that are not covered by NDAs, but I'm sure you do. But
oh my God, so many. well, can I just say this? I mean, I do mental health events, and a lot of times the clients that put them on openly struggle with their own mental health, and sometimes, you put people with mental health challenges in a situation, there's just, it's a ripe environment for triggers for everyone involved. So, it can be a very normal thing to have miscommunications, to have, people, caught up in their own stuff and projecting onto you, and having tools to deal with that is so important, and there's even a situation right now at work. I'll give my little NDA thing here. I'll say it's, some people I work with closely where there's someone who is, not handling things the way we would like. And I am going to have to confront this. I've started to confront it, but I think I'm going to have to confront it at a bigger level. And it's starting to stress me out. It's starting to trigger some things in me. It's bringing up some anxiety. So I'm really thinking through being intentional. Actually, I'm learning a lot. I'm taking notes from both of you as you're talking on how to deal with this right now. And I'm trying to do my best to be clear with this person. That's what I want to do in my mind. Be clear with what I'm looking for. Not give too much information, because there's no need to go into my life story on what's, triggering me, and also honor the other person, try to from their perspective as best I can. So it's a lot to accomplish in a little communication, but it's so important.
Yeah. And I mean, I think in I don't know if the majority of cases is necessarily the right word, but in most cases I've seen, it's not necessarily anyone's fault. It wasn't like they were out to get you. It's often a bunch of stressed people in a difficult position. And it could be a bad work environment. It could be bad timing. It could be people triggered, miscommunication, whatever the case may be. It just kind of grows and grows and grows until everyone's like, I can't do this anymore. And it just kind of blows up people's faces. That's kind of been my experience. But like I was saying, I think for the most part, we've been really lucky that we found some great clients and we've had at least fairly limited experiences. And I think that isn't the case for a lot of people. And so I was having a discussion with some other freelancers, and we were talking about disclosing mental health directly and indirectly. So I'd love to get your thoughts, Chrissy, on how would you talk about your mental health indirectly? And what I mean by that is sharing your needs as maybe boundaries and managing client expectations without saying, I have this, this, and that, or waiting until you're in perhaps crisis mode to say, yeah, this what's going on. Do you have any examples of when you've done that, or any advice for any tips for doing that?
Yeah, I have both actually. For examples, I'm going to go back to, how with the vetting process with new clients, it's like asking questions, getting curious, paying attention to things they talk about that might be important to them. I will tend to say, do my own work on how I'm feeling. So if anxiety comes up about this deadline, or my MO is, oh my gosh, this work is horrible, having that imaginary standard of having to be perfect all the time. And even though I've been a designer an art director for 17 years, it's like, oh my God, I'm awful. And then it's like I start in that loop and I'm like, okay, so my clients don't have to know, like, hey, I sometimes ruminate on thoughts and I'm recovering from being a perfectionist, and this litany of stuff that has nothing to do with the work that we're doing. It's me, and I'm taking responsibility for myself and my triggers and if I could swear, my shit, right? And the way I communicate that is it's like, if there's a deadline that day, I'd be like, hey, you know what? I'm in a good spot with this, or I'm kind of unsure about this, depending on where I truly feel that the project is without that anxiety ruling the show. And I'm like, would it be okay with you if I let things lie for a day or two and come back to it with fresh eyes. And that's something where everybody that I have worked with has been okay with, where it's just like anchoring when the anxiety comes up, anchoring myself and, hey, I've been doing this for 17 years. They hired me. They believe in me and I'm just having a shit day. Right. And I'll get through this. And I think that, I'll just let them know where it's at without making it this emotional conversation. Right. Focus on the work. Like, hey, like I need some space to come at this with fresh eyes to make sure it'll be what I really want to present to you based on our agreement.
I love that. I love that because rather than saying, yeah, I have this issue and it means I can't function well and that means I need more time and it's totally like you're like apologizing for something that you're not really in control of, as opposed to saying, I'm the expert here. I'm in a good place with this or not in a good place. Doesn't really, whatever. I'm in this particular place with this, and it would be valuable to you if I take a little extra time to see this through. Like, I think spin is the wrong word for that, but what a great angle for that. What a great way to approach that. And I think it's good for both you and the client too, because then you're not just like, yep, just fucked up my week. Awesome. Fucked up this project. Great. It's like, it's a different way of thinking. And then you can be like, okay, I did the thing. I got the time. I will be coming back strong from this. As you said, I will get past this. And then you get to rest and you can feel the anxiety and you can feel the feels and be anxious and then move past it and then do some awesome work. So yeah, anyway, fangirling.
Yeah. And you asked about advice in that question. And I think the most important thing is self-awareness. And it's knowing, and that comes with time and experience and a lot of trial and error and bumps in the road. But for me, like, I know my cycles. I know I struggle with, I've mentioned it before, this imaginary standard, this perfectionism, and, I'm letting somebody down because it's not coming out the way that I think it should be in my head. And I keep butting up against these limitations that I impose on myself. And I'm just like, I need to get out of my own way sometimes because my judgment of myself and my performance, it's almost like a form of self-sabotage, right? And knowing that about myself, I'm able to honor it. It's like, okay, well, hey, self, you're being you again. Here it is. Here we go. Woohoo, another round.
Here we
right?
go.
But honoring it and giving it space, and this is the work that I do behind the scenes, I honor it and give it space to myself without having it spill over to my clients. And that has come, again, stressing with time and a lot of reflection. This was not something I was able to even articulate a decade ago, right? So
growth. We like it. Well, I want to share something personal, actually. And when my team hears this, they're going to be like, uh-oh, he actually said this on a podcast. And it goes right with what you're saying, Chrissy. I had to, basically, to sum it up, I've been giving up some control on my team to others. And I'm putting it out there that they are women. And one thing I've learned in my own mental health journey is that I have some mommy issues like many men. And sometimes that can come up in my stuff. And I'm aware of it. And I realized that there was some resistance coming up for me.
Oh, goodness.
And it was my mommy issues, So I told my therapist the night before the meeting, I said, I'm just going to talk about it. I'm just going to be honest with them about where my control issues are coming from. And she said, well, are you sure you want to do that? And she said, well, why do you need to give them all that information? And I said, well, I don't know. I just want to be honest and transparent. That's what we do around here. That's what we do in my business. We had a follow-up session and she's like, how did that go with that? And I said, I think it went fine. And she said something very important to me. She said, when you give that kind of information, sometimes you lose the message and you start just making yourself the center of attention on something. And that really hit me hard because it realized that, and I wrote this book, Transforming Stigma, which talks about, talk about your mental health challenges, be open about it. But sometimes I think I have been guilty of maybe being in a situation at work or with a client. A situation comes up and I need to disclose where my mental health is coming in, not realizing that in doing that, more than actually communicating what I was wanting, I was actually just making myself the center of attention and it didn't do anything. Another situation that happened years ago with a major company I was working with, I'm not going to say the name of this one, there was a nightmare of communication happening between me and the head of marketing for this company. It was just a hot mess, and it was several people involved. And I actually just said one thing to him, just one question. I love your questions, Chrissy. I'm going to actually call you up separately and get a list of your questions. I asked him one question because there was a lot of distrust and a lot of drama. I said to him, what do we need to do to get to a place of trust together?
Awesome.
That's it. And it opened up such a good conversation that fixed the problem we were having. I didn't need to say anything about my stress or whatever. And it was really powerful. So I love what you're saying about like framing the question and not putting too much of it on your client.
Yeah. And if I may, Mike, I mean, what you said is really interesting because, as I've worked with both of you, what has been interesting and somewhat difficult for me is it's like, you're my clients, right? But there's a friendship that's been developing. So then it's like, that's the other thing with being a small business owner is it's like when you work with people frequently and then you connect on levels outside of the creative realm and the business realm, it gets, I know that I've had talks with both of you about mental health, and it's like to draw that line and be like, I'm going to wear the friend hat here in this conversation and then go back to the client. I'm going to put on my client pants. I'm almost interested in hearing how you guys navigate that. Cause that's what I have a problem with is it's like, I'm just like new friends and I get so excited. And it's like, it's both. It's you guys just aren't friends. You're also clients. And I find that is yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. We have to answer that.
Well,
Mike.
I have so much to say on this. It happens even with Leanna and I, because we have this.
Because I started out working for him and then with him, and then we started projects together. So we've kind of gone back and forth. And yeah, I think, I guess I initially worked with a company that brought you on as part of the project, Mike. And then after that was over, then I worked for you and then with you. And it's just like,
yeah. Somewhere we became friends.
Me neither. It just kind of happened.
Somewhere we became friends in there. I don't know where. No, and the thing that is great about our working relationship, this always comes up every episode, by the way, Leanna, something good about our working relationship is that we have some very honest conversations because we both have struggles. We both have to produce a podcast. And I know that we were talking the other day about something and I had to say something I don't remember my exact words, but I said, okay, Leanna, I want to ask you about something, but I'm just going to put on my friend hat right now.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And so I think what I've learned is it's okay to have multiple roles, but the problem happens when we're not clear about which one we're in. So, if it's a client role, say, look, I'm going to put on my role as, you're working with me, Chrissy, on this stuff, let's talk about this. Or I can just switch to, hey, let's just go to our friendship now. Forget about that for a moment. What's going on? And I find that when you do that, it gives clarity to the relationship actually, and makes things flow smoother. It's not a perfect thing, but it works a lot better.
Yeah, I think for me, it always comes down to shared values, because I can think off the top of my head of several clients who have become good friends over time. I don't think I've had any good friends who became clients. I think it usually works the other way around for me. I think in general, I sort of avoid the friend to client scenario, same as a lot of people avoid working with their family. Plenty of people can do it. I just don't know if I'm one of them. I tried working with my husband. That was an absolute disaster.
Oh goodness.
It's more, yeah.
Oh my God, into the fire.
That was a whole relationship, me learning my weaknesses as a manager thing. On the upside, I didn't end up practicing on some poor sap who didn't know me. So this was my husband we were talking about. He knew how to handle me at my work. So that was something at least. But in general, I have a really good friend now who is, oh my God, Mike. Sorry, he just sent me a message. But let me finish. So I have a client at the moment who really I have a really good friend at the moment who started out as a client, and over time that developed. And I can think of at least one more person in that situation. And it really was over time, shared values and understanding that the two types of relationships didn't bleed into each other, in that there was no taking advantage on either end, where we used information against each other, where we used the friendship to get discounts or more work or anything to that extent. It was very much like you're this and this, but there's still two different roles. And it does make for a better working relationship, in my opinion, if you develop a good, that rapport over time, that friendship over time, if you will. But it's just making sure that they don't bleed, I guess. Oops, I just dropped something. Yeah, so I think Mike has just reminded me that we're at about 45 minutes. Yeah, so probably move on to our next question now, Mike.
Like chit chat.
Mike, do you have our next question?
I just want to quickly ask you this, based on, you shared so much and so many good nuggets here, but thinking of like other freelancers, maybe someone just getting started out there in their own business, like, you suggest that people have systems in place that they start to put in place as they develop their business for talking to clients about mental health scripts? Like, what would you suggest to someone just starting out?
Or to support your mental health? Like, what are systems that you can implant into your business to support your mental health, so you don't necessarily have to have those, go into crisis mode with clients, if that makes sense?
Well, I know that for me, structure is important, but to other people, structure is stifling. So this goes back to self-awareness and knowing yourself. So for somebody like me who likes structure, the big one, especially if you're remote and you're not around people, is to have a routine, a morning routine. That's a simple way of creating a structure to start your day, to have a ritual, if you will, to get the creative juices flowing, get into your business pants, read, like sometimes I'll get up, do yoga, and then I've been getting into poetry lately, and then I'll read a poem from a different source, and then it'll ground me for my day. I found that if I skip those rituals of self-care, because I'm like, gotta make the deadline, gotta do this, gotta do that. Oh my God, I gotta hustle. And again, that's another thing with me, is I get into that go mentality. I lose myself, and then that creates more anxiety. And it's giving myself that space and that acceptance to just chill out and center myself every day. I think that's so important for people. Whether you're a fan of structure or not, I feel like everybody could just use some good old self-care because it's, for a long time with traditional business practices, it's like, going back to sacrificing yourself. Mike, you mentioned earlier in the episode, like, I've like something along the lines of don't burn a bridge. Right. And a lot of people, I feel like, in our culture in the US, it's like, work yourself ragged. The more you suffer, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's really unhealthy to have that mentality. And the more that you are able to anchor into yourself and give yourself space to just chill out and be with yourself, that's going to start your day off better. The other thing I have to say is, another piece of advice, is get comfortable with uncertainty.
That's a good one.
And the ups and the downs. And, I feel like a lot of what I've learned through the years, even with my system of asking questions, it's not like a checklist of things that I do. It's not like, did I take the dog out? Did I do this? It's more like checking in with myself, centering, and emotional wellness and awareness. That's helped my business more. Sure, like learning a new skill is great. Reading the business books, great. Going into a webinar or course about how to run a business, all great. But never let that be at the sacrifice of yourself and your mental health and happiness. So,
Mike, why did you cough just then? Great timing. Luckily, this is all on separate tracks, so we can cut that out. But that was a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for that, Chrissy. I think it's so true that we need to be able to advocate for ourselves in that way, and to just, as you said,
Yeah, and
those routines and learning to meet those uncertainties with some of that grace and some of that manageability, I guess, for lack of a better word. I think I just made that up. And then speaking of managing things and finding great, good routines for yourself, we've spoken a little bit about how we connected with Chrissy. So she and I first connected. We worked together briefly. I introduced her to Mike, and she ended up creating this beautiful brand that is Bettermental. And now I think you and Mike have done some work together separately as well. And so the three of us have got this kind of awesome work triangle going here. So I'm just really curious what your experience has been with the two of us in terms of mental health, and could we improve as clients? And if so, how? No pressure. Just, this is just live on the podcast,
Really, with improvement, I don't see, it's been great, the whole process. We're able to have open dialogue. I know that with working with Bettermental, what was interesting was to see how well you balanced each other. Leanna, Mike's making a face, everyone, right? Where, Mike is, it's like you guys are like the yin and the yang. And I thought that was so cool. Just Mike, you're more creative and go with the flow, and Leanna's more about structure. And they're both so important to have as.
I think that makes me yang, Mike.
Yes, you're yang.
I can't. Yes. Yeah. So you are the feminine energy in this relationship.
Works for me, and I'm secure with that.
Which is awesome. You wear it so well.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I feel that improvement, I don't have any notes for improvement because we work so well together.
Yes.
And it's that, and why I've worked with each of you separately as well as on Bettermental. That's another tidbit for advice for people just starting out. Don't spread yourself too thin. Don't go searching for more clients. Find quality clients. Find people you connect with and stick with them.
Love it.
Because it's like I would rather have fewer quality clients than, hop from port to port.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know that when, as a young designer, people are like, oh, get this in your portfolio. You need this and that. That's kind of the mentality, is to diversify. But, having my focus on small business, it's like you find a niche and you find your people and your tribe and you work with them and you grow together. And I feel that, your openness to grow and give and receive feedback, I feel like the three of us help each other out. And I dig what we have, you guys.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was so lovely and complimentary. And Mike, I think she may have answered your last question there, actually.
Yeah, you beat me to my last question was actually, no, I'm going to actually just ask it because by the way, I just want to say, this was an incredible interview, Chrissy. Thank you for the nuggets you've shared so far.
It didn't even feel like an interview. It just felt like a conversation.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's good.
Yeah. And I mean, I know we've spoken about things. I took some notes for myself and, I really appreciate it. But I wanted to ask you if you could just sum up one piece of advice that you wish someone would have given you when you started out on your journey, what would that be?
It goes back to the uncertainty. Before I went fully remote freelance in 2015, the creative director at the agency where I was working, he was just like, you're going to kill it. You're going to be great. And that's what everybody said. It was just votes of confidence, which was awesome. Right. And then diving into being a freelancer and on my own, it's like, I would still hear that, those votes of confidence, but it would be like, it was just so rough at first. And you see I think it's like uncertainty is key. And then don't compare yourself to people. And if you're on social media looking at these success stories, like, my gosh, use a filter, because most people that I know who had success as small business owners, it didn't happen overnight. It was really a trial and error and triumph and defeat. And you take 2 steps forward, it's like 5 back. It's really, really rough. And believe in yourself, but also know that it is going to be challenging, and prep for that uncertainty, and know that the uncertainty is just part of the journey. It's not the whole journey, right?
Oh, what a great quote there. I'm sure our producer will love that. And no, it's so, I can see it in lights now. Thank you so much for that, Chrissy. And like as we close out this episode, I just want to end on this note and just remind everyone that you've been hearing about mental health just like nonstop in your ear during COVID. It's become this huge trendy topic, and that's great. I love that we're having more conversations about this. But just remember, even though mental health is now a popular issue, it's still a very complex and a very personal one. This is still a lot of private stuff that we're talking about here. And our conversations the actions that need to follow those have not caught up to some of the conversations we're having. There's still so many concerns and issues with how we deal with mental health in the workplace, especially as self-employed people, especially as business owners. There's no roadmap for this. So it is okay to have different rules and boundaries. It's okay to disclose. It's okay not to disclose. It's okay to come up with your own version of handling it. That's why we talked about several different ways of advocating for yourself. And that's why we asked Chrissy to join us, because we knew that she had her own experiences, and we're so grateful that she was willing to share them. So feel free to share your thoughts too. If you have ideas and tips about how to talk to clients about your mental health, we would love to hear them. So thank you so much for joining us, Chrissy. I feel like we just spent an hour basically catching up with you, which is awesome.
Oh, it was great. It was great. And I mean, it's like, that's why with mental health, it's fluid. And I feel like moving away from those checklists and here's this interview and did I answer this right? It's like, let's have conversations can be messy, right? Being human is messy, and it's like, that's just how things are. And the sooner you accept it, then the more your life changes, I feel. So
yes, embrace the chaos.
This is awesome. This is awesome. Embrace the chaos. Yeah. It's going to be there. It's going to be there.
It'll be there. It's always waiting for you. Thank you so much again. Thanks everyone for joining us for this episode. Our next episode is all about managing your energy at work. Mike has interviewed me, so I'll be sharing some of my strategies. He's going to chip in with some of his. And the kind of interesting thing about this episode and next episode is we recorded the Managing Energy episode some time ago when he and I were back together in person. And now we're recording this one sometime later with Chrissy virtually. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how this material mixes together and what you can get from each one. So I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode today. And thank you again so much for joining. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening. You can learn more about the resources we mentioned or connect with special guests by checking out today's show notes at bettermental.fm.
And if you liked this episode, keep in touch by following us on your favorite podcast app. In the meantime, we'd love to hear what you think about the show. So DM or mention us on Twitter at BettermentalFM.
Thanks again, and see you next time.